back for another Tuesday or Wednesday in Japan. I am Mike Scala, joined once again by Jay Carter, aka Timid,
Yep.
top artist,
Yep.
BLM Tokyo co-chair, and all the good things.
Chair.
That's right.
Yeah.
What is going on, Timid?
Nothing much. Just getting up here. It's a little chilly this morning. But finally the weather seems to be breaking a little bit. So that's pretty good.
Go. And we have DC's own host of the Random Hour, hip hop artist as well, longtime collaborator of mine and Timid's, Isaac iDog Asare. Welcome to the show, Isaac.
Thanks for having me today. Appreciate it. Oh, just want to add, what is it? Yesterday was Pi Day.
That's right.
Even though it's a different kind of pie, I definitely had you in mind yesterday as
appreciate the shout out.
What is pi again?
Pi is a mathematical constant. It's an irrational number, 3.14159, and it goes on. I think it's been defined to like a trillion places at this point.
And it doesn't repeat.
Right. You could use it to calculate the radius or circumference of a circle. Right?
I had a bar about that once.
The area of a circle as well is 2 pi r. So it depends on what you have and what you're trying to solve for.
Yeah. Oh, so you can have 1 pi, 2 pi.
Right. The area is 2 pi r, or pi times the diameter. And so pi, if you wanted to define pi, you would divide. It would be the area divided by the diameter, which would give you pi. Or is it the other way around?
Pi is not a finite number. I mean, it's not a.
It's an irrational number. It's 3. Like I said, it's 3.14, but it's always the same. That ratio is always the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For every circle. So it's right. Area equals pi r squared. So you want to divide both sides by. Am I doing this right? Someone help me out.
I think so.
Is it 2 pi r? See, I confuse myself now. I talk myself in a circle. Is it 2 pi r or is it pi r squared?
I think pi is 3.14. And
yes, I know that. It's always the same number.
Yeah. But then is that number itself, is it finite? Is it like a finite number, or is just a infinite? Because it's point.
It's an infinite decimal. It goes on forever.
So pi itself is not finite, a finite number.
The area of a circle is pi r squared.
Pi r squared. Okay, so what is the 2? Did I confuse myself with the 2r? Because
that sounds familiar too. 2 pi r is, hold on, let me get it.
Is that the circumference?
The circumference is.
Okay, yes. So there you go. See, I'm confusing the circumference and the area. But
it's been a long time.
You would solve for pi in those equations, and it will be the same for every single circle.
What's up, James?
You're pi. You should know this.
James in the chat, did he clarify?
He said 3.14 and a bunch of different numbers that go on and on and on and on. That's pi.
Right.
Yeah. So it's one of those sacred numbers, like the Fibonacci sequence, etc.
That's right. And also it's useful in calculus, and if you're taking the trigonometry as well, you take in like the sine of a number or of an angle, you measure it in radians, you measure it in terms of pi. It's useful in math.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to say before we went live, I took a COVID test and the results are in. So we can have
all right, let's go.
Drum roll. And here we go. I am officially negative as of this test.
Congratulations. Yeah.
There it is. I will take another test at some point to make sure it's not a false negative, but this is the test that I've taken that has come up negative. So I'm relieved about that.
So either you are negative of COVID or you're pregnant. So,
where did that come from?
It looks like a pregnancy test.
It's definitely a COVID test.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a pregnancy test. I don't know.
Jeez.
But it's glad.
Isaac, you're used to this. See, you are the host of the Random Hour in the area. This has become extremely random, and we're only a few minutes in.
Yeah, I seem to, take that with me wherever I go.
Your energy, your fault. Jose in the chat gave you said congratulations on your negative test, Mike.
Who said that?
Jose in the chat.
Jose, thank you, Jose. Much appreciated, my friend.
No, that's really good. Yeah, because I know you had it last week, and so it's good that you're over it. You seem healthy. You seem good. Any any lasting effects you feeling?
No, I mean, I think throat has been sore. Still, it might take a little bit to get over that. Still coughing a little bit, but I feel good. Yeah, I don't feel sick anymore at all.
Were you able to trace where you got it from?
Yes.
who gave it? Who?
I'm not gonna put them on blast
Oh,
on the air, but I know where I got it from.
But you at least let everybody know at the place that you had it, and they should get checked.
They let me know, actually. Yeah,
Okay.
that people had tested positive there.
Yeah. Yeah. Tracing is always a very important step in the process. So
Yes. So Isaac, I wanted to bring you on this week because you have a new single that you released. Why don't you tell us about that? And we're not going to talk about music forever. I know some people watching like, how come you guys always talk about music? We talk about some different things on this show. We keep it light until we get to the serious topics. And we do have some serious topics we want to discuss. But for the first few minutes here, why don't we talk about what you're into right now, which is your single?
yeah. Well, I mean, we all like everybody likes music, so it's good to talk about music. And of course, it's good to talk about my new single "Heat," which is definitely fire. So much fire. I did a remix, with you on it and including Josie Wales. But it's
Check that
definitely
out. Yours
something,
truly on the remix.
yeah, for folks to check out. Good stuff.
where's it available?
Anywhere on where music is sold, iTunes,
I like that.
Spotify and all those spots.
So the song is called Heat. There's a remix.
Yeah.
Heat remix or the song Heat. Artist is iDog, I-DOG. So you guys can look that up on Spotify, YouTube, anywhere music is available. And Isaac, if someone plays this song as a result of this live stream, I want my 0.2 of a penny.
I got you.
All right.
What, the
What's
half a cent?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the idea behind the song? And is there a link of the song? Yes. What's the idea behind the song?
That's interesting. So I guess this is like the first song I've actually put out in a while. And I was working with, and I got to give a shout out to Kojo Diashanti. He's the one who actually made the beat. When I was checking out some of the stuff he was making, and I found this beat. Initially, he called it old school. So I'm like, okay, all right, And then, once we started putting it together, it was just fire. And that's kind of how the title came about. But it was more, just me, just getting back on track and, having some fun with the beat. And that's kind of how it came about.
Now you actually went to Quebec to record this song?
Yes. Yeah,
Wow.
I was in Montreal, in Montreal. For it, and yeah, it was quite nice. I actually went there, just to relax a little bit. And when I got there, he was like, yeah, I got some beats, you want to come check it out. And then, that's kind of how, I'm like, oh, you make beats, okay, let me see. And then we went through a bunch of beats of his, and then this came up, and I'm like, yeah, this is fire right here. And then I think that same night we did the entire song. And then of course, we mixed it and did the remix later as well too. So good
Right.
stuff. And I gotta say the remix, for folks, it's weird because I already had the concept, and then when I brought it to you guys, you all kind of put your own flavor to it. So I definitely like the remix as well too, because it's definitely it's like me, my verse comes in and I'm talking about this set of stuff, and then you come in with your idea of heat. And then Josie Wales comes in with his idea of heat. And I think that's pretty hot.
Well, I was inspired by the chorus on that, which I think is a really good chorus, where he says, I'm used to playing with the fire, so I'm not worried about heat. And I applied that to what I was going through in my life in terms of the political world, and talk about how there's a lot of heat in this world, but you got to get used to it. It's, that old adage, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. I mean, that was a political saying, right? So I kind of took it that way.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely like the concepts, because you took it to a different standpoint. And then when Josie Wales comes on, he has his own set
Right.
of what he thought heat was, to add to it too. So that definitely added flavor to the entire song, which was pretty cool.
Absolutely. So what is the plan? Is going to be a video for this, or what's next?
Yeah, it'll be pretty cool to do a video. I'm imagining, I'll go to Canada, do a little bit of a video, make my way down to New York, come back to DC, and then go to Florida, because that's where all the artists are. So do an East Coast tour and come up with a music video. So that's
And
the
you can
idea.
compare and contrast the COVID situations in each state along the way.
Or bring it with you to each
Oh my
state.
goodness.
It'll
Carry
be
it.
a super spreader.
But that's what's up. Like, I didn't know you had put a new joint together. This is actually first I'm hearing about it. So we both put out new singles recently. So that's what's up. And I know Mike is working on some new music as well. So
Yes, absolutely.
that's pretty dope.
Go check out Tim's single while you're at it. It's called
We Were Never the Problem.
You Were Never the Problem. That's right.
Yes, we were never
There's
the
a
problem.
t-shirt you can get with that. It's a great t-shirt.
Yes, t-shirt, mugs, any kind of
Mugs,
different
look at
types of
this.
stuff. Oh yeah, I got mugs too.
Isaac,
Yeah.
you got mugs yet?
No, I'm not that
You
advanced.
gotta catch up. We need
I
mugs.
was actually gonna ask Timid, did the song come before the shirt, or was the shirt
Chicken or the egg?
inspired by the song? What came first?
The shirt came first with the message, and the message of We Were Never the Problem is one that's a very important empowering message, especially for just for Black people, but also for United States, and getting some things straight as far as history goes. And so the shirt came first, and then the single came afterwards, and then there'll be some other things that come along with that too. So it's music with a message.
That's kind of what you need to do now. I mean, obviously it's a very serious message and it deserves more than just a song, but musically speaking, or in terms of promoting music, you kind of have to have an all of the above kind of approach. Because as we were just joking about, I mean, you're not getting anything from a few streams. You need to have the device to be viable commercially.
Yeah, these days it's definitely, you have to take a multi-pronged approach when promoting anything. People expect a lot of content and in various ways. And I mean, that's with anything, any type of product or any campaign, even political campaign, like you'd be expected to have something on Twitter, on Instagram, something on YouTube, as well as your flyers and like
Content. Yeah.
are expecting all kinds of content whenever you do. Jose asked, how long have we all been in music? Wow. Yeah, that's it's been
Good question. Yeah. I actually met Isaac through Timid way back in 2002. But
Probably.
I took a few years prior to that. I know you guys were too.
Yeah, and you and I met through music also.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, go back at least to 2000.
Yeah.
So we've Mike and I have performed lots of places, all over the country, put out lots of music together, did a lot of work together on that. So yeah. And
Isaac is famous for his birthday parties / studio sessions in the DC area. That's actually, I think, where I first met you, at one of those iconic sessions.
That's what it was.
Years after that. Yeah. Every time I'm in the DC area, I try to link up with iDope to work on something, whether it's a song, a show, a video, DVD, whatever it happens to be. He's a very creative dude, and he's a main DC collaborator.
Yeah, everyone's got to have that creative outlet, whether you do music, whether you do painting, or whatever it is that you do, it's an important thing to have.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of DC, Isaac, I know DC statehood is a big topic for people in DC. When I first started going to the DC area many years ago, I would see the license plates that said taxation without representation. And I was always confused by that, because I'm used to license plates saying something positive about the state, like the state motto, but in a positive way, like a pro-friendly tourist way, like come here and this is what you get, Georgia peaches or whatever. When I was in DC, I was like, why are they bragging? But they're not bragging. They were actually protesting on their license plate that they pay taxes, but they have no representation. I thought that was always interesting. And maybe we're coming closer to DC actually becoming a state. So what are your thoughts on the topic generally?
It's interesting because I think like it's a topic in the past, it comes and goes, but now it's kind of been the forefront of, what DC wants. And I think, as time goes on, it's definitely going to be something like, everyone in, DC will kind of push to, to make happen. So it's good to see, how far it goes back, and now being like the forefront of topic, in the DC area.
Right. And people have asked about what it would take to actually get that done. Contrary to some people's beliefs, it would not require a constitutional amendment, only a bill, which becomes a law, passed by Congress and then signed by the president. I say only, obviously, it's easier said than done, but it's also easier than a constitutional amendment, which would require participation of states. You wouldn't need any states on board with this, just the Congress to pass it and the president to sign it. There is something in the Constitution that says that there's a capital area, and so you would still need that in DC. But the proposal that's most common is to retain that capital area, which would house the White House and the Capitol, and that would be where the business of the country would take place, or the federal government. But then you would have basically the entire city where the people live, which would become a new state.
Right.
Yeah,
And-
go
go ahead.
Well, I guess there's a few complications to it, and I think that's probably why it's just something that hasn't happened. I know with the there's federal land, and then there's DC land, and also I think the conversation about it's too small, even though technically, I mean, there's other states that's smaller than
Yeah, what about Rhode Island?
yeah, than DC. So that's not really the issue there. But I think, I mean, it comes down to, it's probably just political. Everything's political. I'm sure, they're
Right.
thinking, senators and
Exactly.
Congress,
I think that's the main ramification of it, and probably why Republicans don't want it from a political standpoint. Because if DC became a state, not only would you have voting rights in Congress, full voting rights, but you would have 2 senators, because each state gets 2 senators regardless of population. And we know that the population of DC is overwhelmingly Democratic. So what you would be doing is you would be adding 2 Democratic senators to the US Senate. So you're not going to get Republicans in the Senate or in office generally supporting that idea.
And I think also it opens the gate for, Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico is not a state. So,
Yes, very similar movement in Puerto Rico. It's actually very interesting. If you look at the politics in Puerto Rico, the candidates and the political parties are organized around the issue of statehood. And even within those parties, they have people that we would consider Republicans and Democrats on the mainland US, if you want to call it that. But their parties are organized around that one issue.
Yeah, so definitely an interesting topic, and to see it, being talked about is quite interesting. I think, there's.
Do you support it? Is that something that you would want? Because you're from the area, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be pretty cool to have, DC as a state. I think, I'm already bordered by Virginia, so
Right.
It'll be like tri-state, kind of like, you guys, you guys
All
have.
right. Well, we already call that the DMV.
Right.
What do you guys call it?
You guys call it the DMV.
Oh, the DMV.
Maryland
Yeah,
and Virginia.
yeah. Oh, you guys, what is?
You call it the tri-state area.
Oh,
New
the
York,
tri-
New Jersey,
okay.
Connecticut.
Yeah, we got a better name.
When we hear DMV, we think of long lines waiting to renew our driver's license or something. That for people in New York, that doesn't have a positive connotation. So when we say I'm at the DMV, people don't rejoice.
Oh yeah, DMV, yeah, Department of Motor Vehicles.
Yeah.
That's true. But yeah, DMV, I think it's I don't know when that name kind of came about, but it makes sense, DC, Maryland, Virginia, and
Right.
it's catchy. So.
I think it's a good idea because people in DC pay their taxes. Like they say, taxation without representation. They're paying their taxes. They're contributing to the country the same way everyone else is. Why is it that they are deprived of this benefit of statehood?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that should be considered, and if it makes sense, just make DC a state.
Do you think it's gonna happen at some point?
Man, now I got to bring this up because Mike was on my show last month, and he put out a number 2 years, and till
No,
this
hold on a
day.
second. Wait a second. See, this is the clickbait. I didn't promise it was going to happen in 2 years.
Well, wait, hey, do you want me to play the clip again?
This is how you're getting clicks on your show. Mike Scala promises DC statehood in 2 years.
what
Come
you
on now.
said. Of course, you had other things to say afterwards too, but I mean, you
I
did
have
put
a
out,
lot of qualifiers. I said it depends on who's in control of the House and the Senate and the presidency. And I said I didn't think that Democrats were going to retain the House. I don't think statistically it's not looking very good. And so if Democrats lose the Congress, then they're not going to get it done in the next few years. The only way they would be if they were to win. But then you still have the issue of the Senate, because the Senate is deadlocked right now. You know, so what I'm saying is I don't actually see it happening in 2 years if you're going to make me predict a solid yes or no. But I'm saying the only way it would happen in the next few years is if the Democrats had control.
Well, let me tell you exactly what you said, because I have it on
Okay,
here.
look at this.
And for anybody
They'll
who's,
understand right
who's
now.
doubting me, you can check it out at
Yeah.
therandomhour.com,
Yeah.
because that is the show on there right now. But you clearly said 2 years, and then you said if Democrats, you know.
Exactly.
take Congress.
If. It's a big if, though. And I also said on your show, I don't think Democrats are going to keep control of the House.
Yeah, yeah. But then, I mean, well, yeah, in a way, you kind of spoke like a politician, because you're like, you know what, you have to vote for Democrats if you want, you know, DC to be a statehood.
Where is the lie?
This is
Well,
not a.
here's
This
my
is not
thing,
a,
right? And this is
not a
gonna
new issue. This has come up before. People have been pushing for this for a long time. So, you know.
But
we'll
check
see.
this out, and this is what I said on the show too, because I mean, there've been all Democrat control of Congress, and you know, taxation without representation. That's been going on for a while. So you know, how come back then, when there was Democratic power, you know, nothing happened? So you know, just saying, well, if Democrats get back in office again, I mean, it may or may
But you
not
didn't have the
happen. It's not
momentum
like certain
behind it back then.
Yeah.
Now it's a big issue. It wasn't as big of an issue 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Even when the Obama administration was in power, it wasn't as pressing of an issue as people were talking about it. But these things, that's why political change takes a long time to happen. And like Tim has said, this is not a new topic. If people just started bringing it up this year, it might take another 20 years, 50 years, who knows? But it's been talked about. People have been fighting in the DC area for that for such a long time. And now you have so much momentum behind it. I do think it will happen the next time you have Democrats in solid control of both houses and the presidency.
Yeah, you're right. I think in general, you know, if there's momentum on, you know, behind it, it always, you know, it pushes forward. So there's definitely momentum there, and I definitely, you know, want to see what happens. You know, if the Democrats take office, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens once they're in office.
There you go.
Very, very interesting. We'll see. We're going to see what happens. You know.
And for the record, look, I think Puerto Rico should become a state if Puerto Rico wants to become a state. And I think you do have widespread support for that there. It's the same thing, you know.
You have support and opposition there.
You have support and opposition, but a lot more support than opposition.
Yeah.
And it should be,
That's another one.
it determines for itself. If that's what it wants, I think it should become a state.
Yeah, that's another one
Is
that's
that,
been a long-standing issue.
You have people in Puerto Rico who want it to be a state, who oppose statehood, and then you have people who want it to be an independent country as well.
Right.
The three factions there.
Yeah.
Which I think has been part of the reason why it was so difficult to get that widespread or that consensus around the topic,
Right.
split into three. You know,
Yeah.
Does that mean what the stars on the flag changed? Because it's, you know.
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. Oh wow.
You have to go from 50
So
to
they're
51.
rearranged.
But I've seen designs. You might think, oh, it's gonna like throw everything off and look crazy. I've seen designs with 51 and 52 states and the stars, and you can't really tell the difference just from glancing at it. You would have to count them, but
It's just a bunch of
not
stuff.
in a way that it still looks nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem will come, you know, when, you know, like we annex all of Europe, then it'll be a problem. Then you got two.
Emmett is like luncheon. That's what you guys say in DC, right? Luncheon. He's luncheon.
Yeah, too much lunch.
Wow, do they
I-
still say luncheon? Do they still say luncheon?
I think now we're showing our age. I think the kids say something different.
Wow.
But
I always
yeah.
liked on that Jay-Z song on Reasonable Doubt, you're luncheon, punching the clock. Like, obviously he spent a lot of time at DC, but this is his first song coming out in hip hop, you know, as far as like mainstream success goes, and he's using DC slang as a Brooklyn artist.
Yeah, a lot of New York artists spend time around here. I think this is one of the hotspots, and I think it's so close because it's only 4 hours away. So
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I like going down there, because you kind of feel like it's New York, but different. It's not, you don't feel like you're so far away where it's a culture shock, but it's still far enough away where it's a difference. You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like both worlds in a sense.
And there's a lot of Jersey and Philly artists that come down here too.
Right.
I mean, they have like they're known like around here because they have a certain way of, I guess, carrying themselves.
So you live right on the border of DC, Maryland, and Virginia. You come to New York, you go to Canada, you go to Florida. What have you observed in terms of the differences in these areas when it comes to the COVID response? And who do you think got it right, who got it wrong, or is there really a difference?
It's interesting. I think well, I think going to Canada, that was like they had like strict precautions. I've never I've traveled, I've traveled to Canada lots of times, but I've never once been told like you can't come to Canada. But my first time going to Canada, like they literally made me like he said go back to US, and I literally had to turn my car around and
Wow.
make my way back. And that was because of COVID protocols. I guess there was an app they're using that I didn't have on my phone. So I had to go back and download their app and put in all.
And that was to show what, that you were vaccinated or that you
that
were
I'm vaccinated, and I think you have to have 72 and negative test results within 72 hours before of crossing.
right.
So it was quite strict. And yeah, that was when I realized like, wow, I'm glad I did all these because it's restricting travel basically. But yeah, that was the first time I kind of realized like, wow, COVID is, there's a lot that goes with COVID. I think in this area in general, I can kind of see it between, like Maryland and Virginia, because it's not always the same. And also, a lot of states are, going by the numbers. So, it might be, there might be a large number here and, they have to react differently. Whereas, it's lower in this section and that has to be react differently. So,
Right.
But then between Maryland and Virginia, I could clearly tell, there are times where, Virginia will be ahead of, say, well, we have low numbers, so let's do this. And then Maryland's still behind, or, vice versa, where Maryland's like, okay, we're good now, so we can do this. And then Virginia will do something else.
But is that interesting given the close proximity? So you could go from like one block to the next and see all of the regulations change based on the current data in those states, but you're really just moving in very small.
Just a few. Yeah. I think.
Arbitrary?
Yeah, I think I'm less than like 10 miles. Yeah, away from the borderline, maybe 5 miles. So yeah, I'm 5 miles to DC as well too. So yeah, definitely interesting. I was surprised. I thought DC will have it the worst because it's small, it's congested, and it's easy to spread. But I think they handle it pretty well too because it's. I think Maryland, DC are kind of head to head as far as when they change the rules and so forth. So, but yeah, clearly I think it's been well, and also with all the clubs, clubs in DC, people, lots of gathering spots in DC.
We were there over the summer, and I think the fire marshal was coming around at a certain point to make sure the clubs weren't too crowded.
Oh, I wasn't aware.
Yeah, you were there. I believe you were there. We had just left the club in DC this past summer, and maybe you missed the fire marshal coming around. But I believe it was a fire marshal. Someone was going around checking the capacity to see how many people was in each club to make sure that it wasn't too crowded.
Yeah, yeah, but I think the response was well done. And yeah, I'm glad now things are open again, and it's not as big as a worry. But yeah, overall it was quite rough. It's been 2 years now, but yeah, pretty rough. I think Virginia, it's thing now. It's like all right, we're good now, so we're open. And so it's where I live.
Is it really good though, or is that just a change of leadership?
Well, yeah, you bring up a good point. Well, I mean, the governor did run on, if I win, mask is going to be optional. So that was kind of a weird thing because you were talking when did it become? We're talking, sometime last year, having this conversation.
You just won this past November.
Yeah. So that was quite interesting. That, but then I guess he gained support because he won. But it was weird to kind of see that in a campaign, like, oh yeah, you're being.
That was big issue in the country, though, of course, in
Such
Virginia.
a foolish issue.
Where
Yeah, but that was yeah, that was quite wild. So when he came in office, there was a big push to deliver on that promise, I guess.
I saw a poll right before that election saying that the number one issue to Virginia voters was school autonomy. And do parents decide what their kids learn in school, or should the government decide? Which I think was really used as a political football by that particular candidate to say, if I get elected, parents are going to decide, and then we're not going to let these Democrats dictate what happens in schools. And they use critical race theory and all these different things to scare people around that. But that was the number one issue. That was the most important issue on Virginians' minds heading into that election.
Wow. I did not know that. But I think, it's, and I know we discussed this, I think a lot of times it's kind of, voters are motivated by like, we don't like this, so we're going to support this to get rid of this. And
Right.
it sounds like that's pretty much, the drive on there. And I think politicians also know that, they run on, well, this person did this, so vote for me. It's not like a discussion of, this is how, these are my, this is how I think, this state or, wherever should run. It's more, this person does this bad, I promise to do this good. And that's kind of how it's run.
People, unfortunately, tend to be more motivated by fear and negative emotions than hopes and dreams and aspirations. It seems like it's easier to appeal to what scares people than what excites them in a positive way. And so it's, I think, a cheap trick, but it's one that a lot of politicians will use, especially when they don't really have a platform of their own to run on. They want to scare you about the other person.
Yeah, I mean, you remember even during Obama's campaign, like they were mocking him for the idea of hope and change. And what was it Palin was saying? How's that hope and changey thing working out for you? Like that's not something to mock. That's something to aspire to for the country, for everybody. We should look for that forward and positive progress. It should be something that we celebrate. But yeah, that type of campaigning is it's pretty.
And I hope this isn't a controversial thing to say. It's just what I've observed recently, at least, that the Republican Party is not really running on issues. They're running on fear tactics. Locally, when you saw the debates for city council in my district, look at the Democratic primary debate versus the Republican primary debate. The Democratic debate, which I was in, was all about the issues. What are your plans for healthcare on the Rockaway Peninsula and all these different things? When it got to the Republican debate, it was all about cultural issues, which is what you see nationally, the culture war. And they are running on that now. But I will say this, conversely, Republican voters don't need to be inspired by their candidate. They'll vote for the policy. Like someone like Ted Cruz, they might not like him personally. They might look at him and think, he's Ted Cruz. But if he wants to fight for lower taxes or they think he'll lower their taxes, that's good enough for them. It seems like Democrats want candidates who inspire them, who speak to their aspirations, and maybe they demand more of their politicians, maybe even unfairly sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's a controversial decision. I'm sure probably Republicans would probably say, that is, but I think it's true. It's what we've been seeing for a long time, that they're running off of fear. And it is what it is. I mean, the Republican Party today is not the same Republican Party from, 15 years ago. And so, yeah, and that is what it is.
I think it's also weird because a lot of candidates now, it's like I guess they they try to push the boundaries on either far right or far left, just because it's I guess that's what voters want these days. Who can be who can be as far right.
Well, I actually believe, and I've seen data to back this up, that most voters are not on the far right or the far left. The problem is it's becoming harder to survive a primary if you're not on the extremes because of the bases of the parties and because of the people who are very loud on Twitter and on other places who will drown out everyone else's voice to the point where it seems like that's what everyone wants. But most voters are just living their lives and not really posting that much on social media about politics. Maybe they'll give their opinions here and there or share a story or two, but they're not like obsessing about it. They're just trying to put food on the table and they're kind of in the middle of both extremes.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. I think in general, and now that you mention it, I don't think people really like discuss politics. Well, not like we do. I don't think people really, like really discuss politics until it's like, well, it's time to vote. And then they'll just pick whatever, comes to mind. Like, well, I voted Democrat last year, so let me just vote again this year.
You see more of it with social media, definitely, than you used to, right? Prior to Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, it used to be kind of taboo for anyone to talk politics. People used I wonder if they still teach kids this. When I was a kid, they taught us, like, in polite society, you don't discuss politics. Like, it was like maybe someone like you're very
Well, but even on social media,
but you talk about the weather, or you make small talk with someone. You don't talk about politics,
Yeah. But even politics that's discussed on social media, it's not really about anything. It's like, oh, this person said such and such, so let's get them.
It's clickbait.
Yeah.
There are various conversations, and I think it's with social media. There's there's that rise of interconnectivity. So with Twitter, not only can you post whatever it is that you're feeling, but you can either find like-minded people and connect with, which amplifies that voice, or you're going to find people that oppose it. And then you got rise of applications and things like Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, where people get together and have these rooms of, sometimes, small groups or hundreds of people where they discuss and give their opinions on different things. So you're going to get these types of conversations everywhere.
Yeah. And also, I think, since we're talking social media, I think it also fuels the far whichever way you go, because because of the algorithms too. If you're if you're into this, and then this is going to keep feeding you to the point where you don't even listen to the opposition anymore, basically.
Sure. And they're designing their sites in such a way where they're trying to make you mad, or they're trying to get you to react emotionally. That makes you spend more time and engage with it more than if it's something that you just kind of like scroll by and say, yeah, they want something that's going to be outrageous. They make more money. They in fact make more money when there's more outrageous or provocative content that's spread, that rises to the top of the platform, as opposed to gets buried in the bottom.
Well, it's because when those things are presented, engagement goes up, because either someone who agrees with it has to get on and be like, yes, finally someone said it, or someone who disagrees gets on there, oh, this is so stupid, what's wrong with you? And then so now you've got engagement.
That's what they want. Exactly. And that is the mantra that the news, not even talking about cable news, I'm talking about the news, the local news, going back years. If it bleeds, it leads. They use that same mentality, but now that mentality was used to generate clicks and views and engagements and ultimately fights on social media, because that's what brings in the revenue. Yeah.
And people have to be aware of that's what the landscape is. And you mentioned like the algorithms, for example. So I go on YouTube and I will watch opposing views often to get an idea of what, the other side is talking about, to have that more well-rounded type of view. But let's say you do click on something that, is not your normal view, then the algorithm says, oh, well, you watch this. Well, the next time they're going to show you like 10 more videos, like, here, you might want to check out this. You might want to check out this. And so now you've got this flood, and you have to either, just go ahead and ignore that, but like, okay, I watched what I wanted to see, ignore that, and then the algorithm will work itself out and they won't show it to you again until you jump back in there. But people have to, learn how those things work, or just be on guard and not be swayed by, what's presented to them.
So when the algorithm says Mike Scala promises DC will be a state in 2 years, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, then you're gonna get a bunch of other videos about that. Yeah,
I should just cut out that clip and just spread it.
This guy.
Instagram Reels.
When you run for
Isaac, I want my 0.2 cent. I want my was it half of, I don't even know what it is. 0.2, right? I think it's 0.2 of a penny for every stream that you get off my name.
You get lucky if you get 0.2. I think it's
I believe, isn't it 0.4? Isn't that the standard? At least for Spotify. I think that was the average, 0.4 cents per stream.
No, I think it's a lot.
I'm saying give me half of it. Give me 0.2.
I think you need like 350 streams to equal like $1 or something.
Yeah.
Then I'll be lunching on the dollar menu. All right, so we talked about the division. One thing that I was kind of surprised to see, daylight savings time. All senators, this was unanimous. In the U.S., all the senators voted to make daylight savings time permanent, so we wouldn't be going back and forth between an hour ahead, hour back, hour ahead. It would be the same. For it to pass the Senate unanimously, that tells me that there's a good chance it'll get support in the House as well. We could be doing this by next year. We could be saying goodbye to spring ahead, fall back. I never even know what it is until it's like that day. I'm gonna lose an hour of sleep. Like I never planned for this. So
So basically, they voted to end it.
they voted to make daylight savings time permanent, right? So we would always be on the daylight savings time.
So which one?
Like the difference between the daylight savings time and the standard time, I never know that either. I don't think many people do.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one will stay.
I just know it's spring
one
ahead,
or
fall
is it the
back.
one-
Right.
the one before.
And
Like,
see
is it
that
the fall or the spring one? What stays?
Someone in the chat, let us know, because I honestly don't even know this.
Yeah.
Let's see.
James,
When does daylight savings time begin? Does James know?
no, James is asking. He's like, "What? Wait, we don't have to change anymore."
No,
it
it
hasn't
hasn't.
been put in effect yet, but they voted
In the Senate.
to make one permanent.
They voted in the Senate to do this. It still has to pass the House and be signed by the president.
Right. Daylight savings time is the one that you do through, when you leap forward in spring.
So that's one we just did. So the time
Yeah.
now would be permanent.
Right. And most people think in the States that everywhere does it, but not everyone in the States does it. Arizona and Hawaii are the two places that don't do daylight savings time.
So it's a choice from the
Weird things
state.
also, like I think Venezuela decided to do a half hour time so they can start working half an hour for everybody else.
Wow. And you know what? There have been numerous studies, and people can look that up on Google, that this does affect people,
Yes.
their health, their psychology, that changing of the time and whatnot. It throws people off, and it sometimes takes people, some weeks to get acclimated to it.
Right.
It might seem like just a minor change, but it does take some people to get, sometimes.
You know who made that point on the Senate floor?
Who?
Marco Rubio.
Oh yeah.
You got an ally in Marco Rubio tonight.
Wow. Well, he wasn't the one that invented it though.
I was going to ask you, Timid. So in Japan, they don't switch their clocks. Is it permanent
No.
time or whatever? It's the same time always, right? You don't go back and forth.
Yeah, no, they don't switch their clocks. I mean, daylight savings time in the States, and I think it came by way of England. I'm not completely sure, but I think part of it was because the country was such an agrarian society, relied heavily on agriculture and farming, and so that allowed for that extra time to for your schedules to get into your reaping and your sowing and all of that type of stuff, which is also another reason why we have our school year the way that we do, where the kids are off in the summer because they were needed to work the fields in the summer to get that stuff in.
Well, one of the points that was made on this particular bill was that if you made daylight savings time permanent, kids would have more time to play outside because a lot of schoolyards or parks aren't lit at night. There's no lighting there. And so if you allow the sun to stay out later, it would give them more time to play outside.
If you allowed the sun to stay out
Right.
there.
By virtue of manipulating the clocks permanently.
Go back home, son.
And that's what it is, right? Because daylight savings time is really a manipulation of the time. Like if we're saying we're making it permanent, we're basically saying we're always going to be an hour ahead, which will become the new norm. But we're always, I guess, technically.
Yeah, but I'm still not sure what's the proper time though. Which time are we? Like, is the time
It's
now?
this one. Yes, it's this one.
This is the regular time. And
No. This is daylight savings time. This is what they want to make permanent.
oh, so the original time is the one before.
Right.
Correct.
I see.
Yeah.
Which we just
I
changed
mean,
this past week.
It's all pretty subjective anyway. I mean, it can.
Yeah, it becomes the real time, right?
Yeah. So.
But then, I mean, we can really go back to how was
Maybe we can
time
see.
like divided. Like why is it? I don't know what time it is in Japan, but why is it that time in Japan versus like who created those?
But it's
Um,
international
anyway,
dateline, right? And everything goes normally in an hour increment. And it gets very weird when you get to the international dateline and things jump 24 hours, right?
Yeah, I think it probably had to do with the way the sunrise and sunset happens. So that's kind of where they got the numbers and things from.
Well, why don't we try this? This could be our poll question for the week, and next week we can report back our results. So anyone listening, let us know. Do you think the United States should go to permanent daylight savings time so the clocks would never change? Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah. And should it be should daylight savings time be the permanent one, or should it be
Right.
what we just came from? What would kind of, I guess, be considered, I guess, standard, since daylight savings time is something else? But should we go to the
Yeah,
standard?
and that's something we never really just talk about in day-to-day life, right? I mean, sometimes we'll see EST or EDT, like Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Savings Time, but
Right.
no one ever really uses that or knows what that is. You know what I mean? Like, it's just this weird thing that's out there. It's,
Right.
it comes
Right.
up.
Yeah, find out today there's an Australian Eastern time, which yeah, it took me a while to kind of figure out.
Australian Eastern Time?
Yeah, Australian Eastern Daytime or something it was called. And yeah, I had no idea. I had to literally Google it and find out what time it is on my time. But
Yeah.
that was wild.
Yeah, I think some countries, not all, but some countries also do a version of daylight savings time. Japan doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had something about Elon Musk challenging Putin to a fight. What is this?
Yeah, that was it was a news point that came up. It was on Twitter. Elon Musk tweeted a fight challenge to Putin and said, I challenge you to a fight. The winner gets Ukraine. And yeah, he tweeted that on Twitter, as if he has the power to do that. But
right.
Listen, first and foremost, I'm sorry, Putin would just beat the brakes off of Elon Musk. Like, what does he think is going to happen? Ukraine would definitely be lost if that were the case. We got to remember, Putin is a multi-level, judo black belt,
So
former
he says.
KGB, and, Elon Musk is not. So, but
Well, I mean, it depends on the kind of fight he's talking about too.
It depends on where it takes place. Does it take place in outer space?
yeah, he didn't mention that, but I mean, sorry, I don't think he would win.
Does Elon have the space suit?
He's not that guy. But that also brought up when I read that, and it was kind of tongue in cheek, but people were also kind of and people were kind of laughing at it. But I saw some sites that pit politicians, because I was thinking, well, yeah, because people always say, wars should be fought. The leaders should just go into the ring and fight it out. If you're going to start the war, then you should be the one that's doing it. And so, I thought, yeah, I wonder if anyone's thought about who the strongest world leader is in terms of physical and fitness and whatnot. And so there was a site that had a list of people have taken polls who they think would beat up who in a fight. And there was like Obama versus someone, and Trump versus Putin, and Trudeau versus and it was all of these types of things. So obvious things guys think about.
Who's the top? Who's the strongest leader?
It was a guy. No, there was a leader from the Middle East. I think had the #1 spot. I don't remember his name. And then there was the former leader of what's the Mongolia. This dude's jacked. I'm talking like wrestler jack. He had the guns and so I mean, I don't think we do too well. I like Biden, but I think he's getting folded in a one-on-one.
I think Biden came out ahead of Trump, though, by a slim margin in that poll that I saw.
Yeah, the poll said that they think Biden would beat Trump. Putin would it was like almost like 70-80%.
He'd beat both of them, right?
Putin would stomp Trump.
What about Putin against Trump and Biden at the same time?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. So that would be, it'd be kind of crazy. But what's his name? I think the guy from Canada, Trudeau. He was pretty high up on there because
he's young. relatively
But
speaking.
he also boxes or something like that. Like he stays fit. So yeah, it's foolishness on the internet, but
It is
yeah,
foolishness, but it does speak to something, right? Like I think people, some people, not everyone, but there are people who look to leaders in this kind of a mythical light, and maybe they want them to be strong. You know what I mean? Obviously, they want them to be strong as a personality trait, but maybe if they appear to be physically imposing, somehow that makes them be perceived as stronger people.
well, you also think about
You know?
brings to mind history, and when kings would be the one leading the charge in battle a lot of times, and then look at what's happening in the Ukraine. The president is out there on the ground. You don't see our presidents at the head of battle, but I mean, again, that's a little bit of a different scenario because their country is actually being invaded. But
Right.
I don't see our president, if our country was invaded, I don't know if I could see any president standing on the front line,
Well, I mean, we can go back to what was it, the Iraq situation where I think Bush was going to go to Iraq, I think after the first week or something. And then they're saying, this is insane. Like, you should not do that. And he went anyway. So that kind of, plays into.
And he wasn't going to get on the front line. He wasn't grabbing a rifle.
Remember Michael Dukakis with the photo shoot by the tank, and people say that cost him the election because he looked doofy or whatever they said.
Yeah, like
he was trying to do that. He was trying to show himself as
a photo op.
Photo op is very different from what Zelenka's doing, and where you're grabbing that rifle and you're ready to throw down. That's very, very different. And so, some people think, I mean, the leader, if you're going to, commit people to war, then, you should be a part of that as well.
But I was saying, I mean, that was different from other presidents because, I don't know. Well, I don't know how many wars, with different presidents, but I think out of all the presidents, he was like within a week, he actually went there, just to show support.
He was going to the green zone if he was going. Like, that's not the same.
But he still went. I mean, I'm not trying to give him props. I mean, we can talk about the whole, Iraq thing, but he still did it.
So I don't even know what to say to that. We'll give you the last word before we sign off here. Last week we had my manager on the show, and he said, "Forget Virginia, Queens is for lovers." What is your response?
He said that?
He did say that. We can roll back the clip. Right, Jay? He said that.
I do not recall.
No, remember he was talking about that stat about the calls coming in for Queens. Does this ring a bell now?
I do not recall.
What is going on here?
Well, I'll say this.
I have family in VA, and I used to live in New York.
So he's being a politician now. Okay.
I'll put Andre.
James in the chat says he remembers.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, James. Thank you, James. Someone has my back here.
Andre is a very wild man. I'm sure if he said it, he was definitely, on some other ish. I should put it that way. But nah, it's I mean, you can't take Virginia for lovers from Virginia. Like,
okay.
Come on, what was he doing? What was the conversation about?
You have to go back and watch it.
Check out the show last week. You made sense then.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's
Okay, so what you're saying is next week it's going to be live one-on-one boxing match with Isaac and Andre.
Yes, bring him on.
That's right. Winner gets the slogan.
Yeah.
Queens versus Virginia. I'm rooting for Queens. We're going to change the signs. Welcome to Queens. Queens is for lovers.
You better start training now, Isaac.
That's right.
No comment.
Oh my goodness.
It's ridiculous.
I thought I was a politician here. All right, guys. Any last words?
No, thank you, Isaac, for joining us this week. It's always great to talk with you. And hope everything is good. And congrats, Mike, on the negative COVID test.
It's still negative, right?
Hopefully it
Making
hasn't
sure.
changed.
It
Hopefully
has
it
not
hasn't changed
changed.
in the last 15 minutes.
Oh wait, I see a second dot. Is that a second dot?
No. It's the one line is the control. We're good.
I'll be honest.
Positive would mean 2 lines.
I have not taken a COVID test at all. I wouldn't even know where to go get one. Where I live, it's really been a non-factor this whole 2 years. So like, yeah, that's
Lucky.
still kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
I guess real quick, how was the response? I guess in Japan. I guess we didn't hear from you.
Well, the response in Japan was initially criticized for being very slow and a little bit reckless. But they worked on a different idea. They worked on this idea of cluster identification to identify those and to try to quarantine that. They never did any lockdowns here. The government actually doesn't have the power to lock down public like in other places. So it was a lot of suggestions, like we suggest that businesses close, we do this and that, and businesses, it was up to them whether they complied or not. And a lot of them did, especially in the first year. And they did put in some time limits in place, like on bars and things, to close at earlier hours. They could do that. But they couldn't stop people from traveling or anything like that. But people did. They followed it. They complied. Masks was never an issue here. It's a common thing in Japan. It always has been. People to this day are wearing it. No one complained about that. That's why it was. People were looking at the States and it's just like, Jesus Christ, you guys are like children. It's just like foolish. Masks is so common in Japan that during cold and flu season, people are wearing them, but even more so if a woman doesn't want to put on makeup that day, she'll wear a mask to work. It's that common. It's a non-factor. So that was kind of what it was out here. I don't know if, we had pretty low cases throughout the country in general, and the area I'm at was out in the country, which has been extremely low this whole time, except for now with the Omicron, where it's blown up everywhere. But comparatively to everywhere else, it is still pretty low. But that's, I actually expected it to be even more out here. So I'm a little surprised because Japan has such a large elderly population.
Right.
It's one of those countries that there's so much more elderly than anyone else, and so being that COVID attacked that age range, I expected it to be kind of devastating out here, but it just wasn't. It definitely wasn't, and they were really slow on any measures in the beginning. They were very, very slow on the vaccine rollout. They're only now just talking about boosters. So, I think there were other factors here, probably, the mask wearing, the hygiene, as far as hand washing and alcohol and stuff is like at almost every store. So I think there was some, and distancing with there's no hugging and stuff like that and embracing in Japan like there is in the States. So I think some of that played a role in it. So.
All right. Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me here. I've been into coding and cloud computing lately, so I don't get out much, but appreciate that invite. And check out therandomhour.com, where Paisan clearly promised 2 year statehood.
This guy, I swear. Now that I tested negative, Isaac, I can leave my house. So I might
okay.
on the street. Watch me.
Oh, he's gonna see you. He's gonna see you in the streets.
I'll be waiting.
I might have to represent Queens in epic battle for the slogan.
Oh, he's gonna be like, "Yeah, Queens is for lovers," as he's beating on your
Right?
head.
That's right.
I'm sure there's a committee somewhere, Virginia's for Lovers committee somewhere that will come handle that.
All right, we'll see.
Like, how dare you taint that name, that slogan.
Well, thank you, Isaac, for joining us. Once again, his single is called Heat. The artist is iDog. Check out yours truly on the remix, wherever music is available. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.
All right.